Alrighty, folks. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Andrew Guidarelli. I'm the Partnerships Manager for Tuck Consulting Group. And I've got Alex Tuck, our fearless leader, and Jason Lorber, one of our strategic partners from Aplomb Consulting. By the way, I did not do well in English. I don't know if I got that right, Jason. So let's kick it off. Jason, can you tell us a little bit about your company, what you do, where you're located, and why you started it?
Sure. I'll do that in opposite order or different order.
That's fine, whatever.
That's cool. I'm in Vermont, and about half of our clients are here in Vermont, the rest throughout the US. And what we do is, I started my company after I got my MBA. I was writing strategic plans for nonprofits and government agencies, and then I realized that they weren't implementing them. So I took some time off. I got into public service. I served in the Vermont House of Representatives for 4 terms, 8 years. And I also pursued stand-up comedy. I opened for Joan Rivers. This is when she was alive. And during that time away from Aplomb Consulting, I paid attention to team dynamics and teamwork and message and trying to key in on the punchline or the action, the goal. And now I facilitate change. I facilitate the strengthening of leadership skills and also teamwork and strategic planning. And my magic is around facilitation. It's my core competency, and I help leaders and teams uncover and articulate their superpowers, because at the end of the day, it's up to them to follow their dreams and their goals. And we're going to be talking about mission and vision and mission-driven organizations. And so I'll pause there and we can continue.
Thank you, sir. Alex, could you give us a little similar background for Tuck Consulting Group?
Yeah, sure. So I am about 35 minutes northeast of Jason, out in Underhill, Vermont. Our 60-person project management consulting firm is based out of my 8-acre farm out here in Underhill, with a river that runs through it. I have 4 children under 10, 2 goats, and about 30-ish chickens. Since the last massacre. Anyway, we do project management, and so we do the sort of boring piece, but like we're intentionally boring because no one wants an exciting project, right? Because that means that something is broken, right? But we do the tactical work, the taking of Jason's like beautiful strategic plan where everyone has this vision, and then we help execute that across the organization. And so we do anything from like helping set up projects within a project management tool to building out an entire project management office within large organizations. So helping orgs decide how many project managers to have and what do the playbooks look like and things like that. So we run the gamut of very tactical 5-hour-a-week projects to full-blown PMOs. So very excited to be here, Andrew. Thank you.
And I just like to mention for the audience, so both of our companies are working with a range of organizations. I think today we want to focus on our nonprofit clients. I think that's something we all feel passionate about. It's a very important sector to, I think, Vermont's economy in particular. And I think this is something I'm really glad to have both of you on to talk about it. So Jason, going to you. So you're a consultant, you're a comedian, you're a coach, and you're a retreat facilitator for clients ranging from small nonprofits to federal agencies. How do you scope an Aplomb engagement and suit the needs of each client? And maybe specific to our nonprofit audience, what does a successful Aplomb engagement look like?
Okay, good questions. So let's start with my fundamental philosophies and principles of change management. And I'll just focus on 2 because that's where I focus. One is that every individual has a magic inside them. And the better they can articulate that, the more transformational change they'll be able to incorporate. And the same is true for organizations, for them to be very clear, what is our strength? What should we outsource? What should we have others do? And where should we focus? The second principle is that no one likes being told what to do. And that's a powerful constraint or obstacle, but it's also the key ingredient to success, because we don't want to just create a strategic plan and then have it gather dust, as I've had happen before. It's important that the people who are responsible for implementing all the changes that they're tasked with, that they be the person to design that roadmap. And so the leader of an organization, whether it's an executive director or president of a company, but we're focusing on nonprofits, that they set a clear vision and direction. And when they do that, they need to do that with input from all their stakeholders, including staff, board, and for many volunteer-based organizations, the volunteers, so that they all agree, yeah, we're going over here. Not over here, but over here, and specifically right there. So now they have a clear sense of what they want to accomplish, and then it's up to the executive director to enable their people to design that change. And so a lot of my work is coaching leaders to help them empower their teams. And that's whether we're doing strategic planning or team building or culture change or skills building, that and changing behaviors in the workplace, whether that's looking at innovation, looking at AI adoption, or just looking at empowerment and how we relate to each other, that the leaders empower their teams to do that. You asked about what's successful for organizations.
Yeah.
And the first part of my work is just asking them that question. Okay. So what do you want to accomplish? What will be success to you at the end of the day? And how will you know that you're successful? Understanding the difference between key metrics and supporting metrics. And we can get into a conversation about that if you want, but I just want to give you a broad brush of understanding what success looks like and then how do we get there.
Yeah, Jason, that was excellent. Alex, to follow up a little. So what does a successful engagement for Tuck Consulting Group look like? And actually, let me say, how does Tuck Consulting Group get involved with a nonprofit? What are we offering them, and what can we do for them?
Yeah, it's a good question. Honestly, I'll start with the success. Success looks the same as what Jason just described, right? Because at the end of the day, how people do work, the work that they do is so intensely personal, right? And whenever you're talking about, what is the strategic vision for the organization? What's the strategic vision for like how we're going to run this project? Any of those things, right? Like it's deeply personal for each individual, and making sure that everyone is rowing the same way and there is a leader that is driving things forward, whether it's a project manager or an executive director, is very, very important. So success is meeting the needs of the organization, of the team that's doing the work, period, right? Whether it's project management or strategic planning. So that's on the success side. How we typically get involved is, we might get pulled in to take Jason's work is very strategic, and he actually does have a really nice structure for taking that and giving the outputs of those planning sessions and retreats to tactical leaders, and then those leaders are then responsible for driving the work that came out of those sessions. What we typically will do is go like one layer deeper when organizations, let's just say they don't have internal project managers, or they don't have dedicated folks to help them drive certain initiatives, or the initiatives might be too big. That might be where we would get pulled in. Like, let's say, for instance, one of the main initiatives is to change donor management systems this year because it's not meeting our needs. And so that might come out of the strategic plan. And then we would take that and put a project manager on it to help with the source selection and take them through that entire journey, and then manage the vendor, and then break out that entire project plan to run that entire project, from moving the data out of the old system and deploying that into the new system. Another example might be just more generically, like nonprofits might be really struggling to get stuff done. They might have, especially with the current climate, there is more demand and less people and less money in the organizations, in nonprofits right now. So how do you deal with that? You have to look for ways to automate and leverage AI and integrate your systems and get everyone talking the same language and doing more with less resources. So we'll run projects just to help organizations think about, like, okay, what are some places where we can automate? What are some places where we can templatize things? How do we stop using so many systems and use a handful of systems better, right? So that's a couple of examples of how we might get involved, Andrew.
Got it.
And
Okay.
just to dovetail on that, so Alex, you talked a lot about making sure that the individuals are in control, and change is hard enough as it is. If someone's stepping outside of their comfort zone or their area of expertise, and we're going to try and do this a little bit differently, that's tough. It's even harder, or next to impossible, when change is being put upon them by their leaders who are saying, do it this way. And the challenge isn't just the buy-in part of, I need to want to do this, because when you step out of the room, I'm going to undermine it, which happens. But there's also the piece that if you tell someone, I want you to run this project a certain way, I might say, okay, great. Yeah, that makes sense to me. And then I start doing it, and then I get lost because the idea wasn't mine. And so I'm not sure if I'm doing what my boss or my manager told me to do. And I get lost along the way. So, but if it's organic, if it comes from them, then they're going to be able to ask the right questions and get the support that they need.
Yeah. And yeah, Jason, I mean, I want you to elaborate on your process, but I know that this is something that you always talk about is, getting everyone involved in that retreat or that strategic plan in some way.
Yeah.
It allows for everyone's voice to be heard, but at the same time, it also creates that intrinsic buy-in that you're describing, right? And then it makes it easier for us. It doesn't make it easy, right? But it makes it easier for us to then take that and run with it from a project perspective and say, all right, hey, look, we all agreed on this overall goal. We need to work together to figure out, what are the different pieces of this goal and what does success look like for us, right? That makes it a little bit easier, right? To your point.
Absolutely. And when you talk about the retreat, so when I'm facilitating a retreat, which I love to do, it's usually either company-wide or it's certainly across different departments within a nonprofit. And because of that, people are coming out with different ideas after the retreat. They don't report to each other if they're in different departments. And then the question is, so how do we glue this all together? If it's within my department, I got this. I can do this. I can work with my people. But now I don't have control over what's going on over there or with that person. They don't report to me. They're not doing what I want them to do. So that's where you need a lot of collaboration. And when I'm facilitating a retreat, there will necessarily be ideas that are generated from the retreat. I make sure that it's structured that way. And so let's say we have 5 or 10 ideas coming out of it. Well, then we want to turn that into action. And so what I do is just a little bit of what Tuck Group does, is I have what I call action teams. And so there's an action team for every different idea, because we want to make sure that the action teams are meeting. I'll facilitate those meetings to make sure that they're on track. But what Tuck can do is get into like a weekly support system and to really help people along with that, and challenge them and articulate, well, what is your strategy? How are you going to do this? When are you going to do this? And so that we're making smart or smarty goals. But what we want to avoid is so many times when there's retreats, whether it's strategic planning or team building or whatever, we don't want people to be like, oh my God, that was so much fun. And they're hugging and they're doing high fives, and then nothing changes. That, if you do it that way, then it's like a vacation with name tags. You need to have it matter, because it could be more demoralizing for teams if they go to a retreat and they're thinking nothing's going to change, and sure enough, nothing does. Then they feel worse than when they started the retreat. It shouldn't be a sugar high. It should be the entree to change.
Love it.
Got it. So, Jason, following up on that, I'm pretty confident everyone in our audience knows what a strategic plan is, and I bet you they all have one on their desk somewhere. What are the hallmarks of a successful strategic plan? And how can you make a strategic plan that already exists successful?
Okay, so
if it's possible.
First question first, and bring me back to the second question.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
If I lose track. Okay, so first, strategic plans can be very different for different organizations. And it's important to be grounded in, why do we need a strategic plan? I actually had a client come to me once and say, okay, we went through this whole elaborate RFP process. They chose a Plum Consulting. We got to work with them. And the first meeting they said, oh, could you put in our strategic plan that we should change our website? I was like, well, just change your website. No, put it in the plan. I'm like, but you're executive director. You get to do that. You don't need me to tell you to do that. And so very quickly, it was like, this is not a real strategic planning process. You're trying to somehow get cover or permission to do your job. That's a whole, and it was a recipe for disaster. They did change their website about 5 years after we delivered the strategic plan, which should have just been done before we were even hired. Anyway, so the elements to a strategic plan are vision, mission, values, strategy or goals, and then strategies to meet those goals. The values piece is sometimes very important and sometimes it's not. And if you could do all of that, what is our vision for the world? What is our mission? What do we do? What are our goals? What do we want to accomplish? And what are our strategies to accomplish those goals? Can you get that into one page? If you can bring that into one page, that doesn't mean, oh, this will be a short process. No, to get to that one page takes a lot of work. Mark Twain famously wrote a letter to I forget who he wrote the letter to, a friend of his. It was 7 pages long, and he said, I'm sorry, it was 7 pages. If I had more time, it would have been shorter. It takes a lot of time to sit through all that data and just get to that point. So if you have that one page, why is that exciting? It's exciting because it's short enough for everyone to learn it. It's concise, it packs a punch, and anytime I'm engaged in any activity at my nonprofit, I can look and say, now, how does this relate to the strategic plan? Because if it's not on that one pager, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Or if I know I should be doing this and it's not on the strategic plan, then we need to change the strategic plan. But we don't want to have the situation where they're not aligned.
Got
And
it.
so that's the end goal. That's what we want to get to. A strategic plan. Well, the end goal is not the strategic plan. The end goal is the implementation of a strategic plan. And sometimes if you don't have the stakeholders involved, then okay, great, there's your plan, but whatever, I'm not going to do it.
Got
Now,
it.
what was your second question?
Well, I'm actually going to change it up with you. I was going to ask, I think this is probably more important. How should a strategic plan inform day-to-day operations for the nonprofit? They based on you've done all this work for them. You've gotten their strategic plan into one page. How should they use it every day?
Okay, so first of all, I just want to say I've done all
Yeah.
this work. When I'm
Yes.
writing a strategic plan, it's their ideas. I say,
Okay.
you're the content experts.
Yeah.
I'm the process person. I can figure out how to hold you accountable, how to provide you support, how to make sure you're having these discussions that everyone's included in and participated in, including the introverts. We have special strategies for them, including for people whose voices normally aren't heard. We also need specific strategies to have that inclusion. Okay, so that was, and then your question was, how do they do it day to day? And that's that every week, certainly every month, but hopefully every week, people are looking at what they're doing and they're saying, how does this fit into the strategic plan? And if there's misalignment, then we need to have that conversation.
Yeah. Can I jump in and say something, Andrew? Like
Please.
you hear me, you're part of my team. I'm like, put your OKRs up on the wall, right? Like make sure that, you know, every single thing that you're doing at the organization should be driving towards whatever that strategic goal is, or whatever that objective or key result is, whatever framework you're using to drive, you know, strategy in the organization. You should always be thinking about like how your day to day is contributing to that. And, you know, look, we still have to pay our bills. We still have to, you know, hire new vendors and do things like that. But at the end of the day, anything that you're working on should be, you know, going towards, you know, moving that mission forward.
And I love that you said that, Alex, because that bread and butter, like, well, we have consistent operations, that can sometimes be forgotten. And I worked with one not-for-profit who created the strategic plan by the head of the organization, not with input from people. Very smart guy, very great leader, but he said, let me just do a one pager. So we did his one pager. It was powerful. It was awesome. But it was all the cool, sexy new stuff.
Okay.
And so to your point, Andrew, you know, so if I'm doing day-to-day jobs, how does this apply? I'm not doing the bleeding edge stuff. I'm just doing the day-to-day normal stuff. So we got feedback from people, and I went through a process to ask everyone, okay, so how does this strategic plan affect your ability to get things done? And what happened was a lot of the people in the non-sexy traditional core part of their business, as a not-for-profit, said, I don't see myself there. And leadership said, oh my God, you're right. So they needed to change that. And then people saw in the second year, the strategic plan recognized all those other things and celebrated them. And then people could say, okay, I'm a part of this organization. I'm a part of this. I am strategic. I have a strategic need that this organization needs me and I belong here.
Yeah. Alex, I just real brief, is it easier to work at an engagement if there's already a strategic plan in place?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty rare for us to go into a nonprofit specifically without a strategic plan. I started a nonprofit. I run a nonprofit.
Yeah.
The strategic plan that sits and gets dust, like, you know, we might have one of those. You know, it's tough. It's, you know, it's very rare to run into a nonprofit that doesn't have some sort of strategic plan. The question is, does it have a good strategic plan that is actionable? That's that one pager that can really drive the vision, as opposed to just being like you know, a desk ornament, right? And so you know, yes, the answer is yes, Andrew. Like when I think that I think it was a yes or no question.
Yes, that's right.
The you know, when there is a strategic plan in place, like leading the company on a particular project or initiative is infinitely easier. And specifically where Jason talked about having a vision, mission, values, goals, and strategy, right? Like the values piece
Yes.
is, in my opinion, the most important thing that flows into the work that we do,
Okay.
because that's really what drives the organization. So,
Well, I'll say, when I'm working with an organization on their strategic plan, I'll take a look at what they already have in place. Most
Okay.
organizations have a vision statement, have a mission statement, and sometimes I'll look at it and say, okay, maybe it's not an A plus, but it's a B plus or it's an A minus. It's good enough. Let's not reinvent that part. Let's look at the values. I worked with an organization for 7 years and they never codified their values. But at the same time, they all operated so in sync that they said, that's not a priority right now. Right now, we need to focus on the goals. So for every organization, it's going to be a little bit different about what do we need to work on right now. But to Alex's point, absolutely, they need to have that roadmap. Otherwise, people are going in different directions.
yep.
Okay, I'd hate to end this on a negative note, but I'd like to hear like a horror story from both of you on briefly an engagement where a client did not do any of the best practices we've just discussed, and perhaps what the lesson learned was from that. So, Jason, I'll start with you, if you don't mind.
It's not having follow through. It's when I go in with an organization, I say, hey, do you want some action teams afterwards? Actually, I don't ask them. I say we're going to have action teams afterwards, and now I can say, and we're going to have detailed project management as we're teaming up with Tuck, because if they're not committed at the beginning to doing that, then it's going to fail. And I've seen that with so many organizations that say, well, we're trying to save money, so don't help us with that most important part of making it stick.
Yeah. And I'll look at it from the other angle, right? So as the recipient of that strategic plan to execute on, the toughest organization, it's not just one. There's several organizations, typically founder led still, people that have been there for a really long time. They write great strategic plans that come from their head and maybe the board as well. It doesn't include any of the organization itself. And so, I mean, we literally have a client right now where, or had a client that the leader was saying, hey, we're going to do this thing. And they told their teams. And then we went to do that thing with the teams. And the team said, we are not going to do that. Literally told us that they weren't going to do it. And so we're like, what do you want me to do? Like, do you want me to anonymize it? They're like, no, you can tell X leader that we're not going to do it. So anyway, when a strategic plan comes from the top, to Jason's point from earlier in this chat, those are doomed to fail almost entirely. Or if it's only written by the board, basically, if it's not written by everyone or everyone's not included, that's the problem. So,
yeah. And guys, it's been a really awesome. Sorry, Jason, my bad. I cut you off. Yeah, it's been a really awesome half hour. Just before we go, I wanted both of you to share where else we can find you for more thought leadership and possibly, a follow-up discussion. So, Jason, I'll start with you.
Sure. There's my website at plum.com. There's my LinkedIn page where I'll post about what's happening, whether they're workshops or talks that I'm giving or stand-up comedy shows that and I'll be having some more in the fall and winter.
Awesome. And Alex, how about you? Where can we find you?
Yep. I'm a LinkedIn guy. I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn. I'm a serial connector, so please connect with me, and I would love to introduce you to my other connections that can be great resources, potential clients, potential partners for you. Also, techconsultinggroup.com is our website. And we just launched a podcast called Project Zero. I would love to have any amazing project leaders out there join me on the podcast. And if you want to be a listener, you can find us on any of those fancy platforms that exist out there, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. Project Zero. Thank you, Andrew.
All right. Thank you both. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to hearing from both of you again. Take care.
Thanks.